Hello and welcome. I'm SAG-AFTRA Executive Vice President Ben Whitehair. Thank you all for joining us for another SAG-AFTRA program on YouTube. To stay current with all of our video events, we invite you to subscribe to this channel, which you can do right now. We are joined today by American Sign Language interpreters Billy Sanders and Susan Wheeler. As a reminder, today's program is being recorded and you can watch the replay on SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel, along with a vast catalog of other great content. Today, we're going to talk about child performers. These pint-sized actors bring heart and authenticity to their roles and have starred in some of the most iconic films and television programs out there. They have a special place in the entertainment industry, and accordingly, there are special rules and protections governing how and when they are allowed to work. We're going to take a look at these special provisions for child performers, examining important topics like child labor laws, the number of hours minors are allowed to work, onset rules for parents, and educational requirements. To help guide us through this conversation, we have enlisted SAG-AFTRA National Director, Background and New York Entertainment Contracts, Stephanie Perry. Before assuming her current role, Stephanie supported members for nearly 2 decades through several positions at SAG and SAG-AFTRA as a business representative, manager, director, and senior director of entertainment contracts, where she oversaw the administration and enforcement of all entertainment agreements. Before her service at the union, Stephanie held legal business affairs and contract roles at various entertainment conglomerates such as 4Kids Entertainment and Marvel, Inc. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. It is great to see you again. Let's get the show on the road.
Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate that. And I am here to talk to you today about the world of young performers. And we're going to basically start with our first slide. SAG-AFTRA endeavors to be on the forefront of protecting the safety and morals of our young members. And we do this by working in tandem with the relevant state laws. That being said, there are several governing bodies of rules that apply when employing minors. You want to look at, of course, the collective bargaining agreement, Section 50, which talks about the contract provisions that apply to minors that are being employed on TV theatrical sets. You also want to look at the state laws of where the minor resides and also the state of where the minor is performing the work. The takeaway from this is that the collective bargaining agreement has a provision that states the most stringent of those rules will apply. So it could potentially be our contract. It also could be the state law where the minor is residing, or it could even be the state law of where the minor is performing the work. So we get this question quite a bit, often, which is, what is the definition of a minor? So performers under the age of 18, under that age, are considered to be minors, but there are a few exceptions to this. If that minor performer has satisfied the compulsory education requirements of that state that is overseeing their employment, if the young performer is married, if that young performer is a member of the armed forces, or if that young performer is legally emancipated. And I want to make a little bit of a note here that, this is also a source of sometimes confusion, that being legally emancipated and also being the legal age of 18 are not the same. Reason being, emancipated minors do have rights that vary from state to state. But in California, for example, emancipation by itself does not allow the young performer to work as an adult. So it really is essential for emancipated minors to comply with the laws of the states in which they are working. So this is a great guide for producers that you'll find in the collective bargaining agreement that actually dictates how long a young performer is able to be employed on a TV theatrical set. So there's a couple of rules surrounding that time frame. One, they can never be called to set earlier than 5 a.m. And that includes a call for hair, makeup, or rehearsal if that's occurring on the same day. And they actually cannot work anything later than 10 p.m. on a school night And there's a little bit more flexibility on a non-school night on that Friday or Saturday, which the minor can work and be dismissed at 12:30 a.m. If the minor is less than the age of 6, it's a maximum of 6 hours that they can be employed on set, and that is per day, and that excludes meals, but it does include the school time. The ages 6 to 9 is 8 hours, 9 to 16 is 9 hours, and of course, 16 to 18, you will have 10 hours to have that minor employed on set. Now we're going to talk a little bit about supervision. It's a requirement that the minor's parent or legal guardian must always remain within sight and sound of the minor performer. That means they have to be able to see them and, of course, hear them. There is an exception, obviously, when the minor is being tutored. Also, when working on an overnight location, there is bargaining for, expenses. And one of the things that, we always like to talk about whenever issues occur, in California, on-set teachers are welfare workers. And because of this, they are really great at resolving conflicts. So we always make the recommendation that any concerns should be brought to the attention, of course, to the union, to the on-set teacher, and also possibly a stunt coordinator. There are times when a minor may be asked to perform an activity that is hazardous or maybe somewhat a bit questionable. And we really want to ensure that if it is something that is a bona fide stunt, that is being performed by a qualified stunt person. It really should never be the sole decision of the producer, the director, any crew member, to really determine if a particular activity is safe enough for a child to perform. What's really essential is that that parent or that legal guardian of that young performer is involved in that discussion. It is the parent who really knows best what the child can or cannot tolerate, and they certainly do have the right to refuse any performance activity that could be hazardous to the minor. And this is whether it's physically or even emotionally. As I said at the top of the presentation, the union is always at the forefront of the safety and morals of the minor. Schooling. So these are the educational requirements of the contract. And we have requirements that if 3 or more consecutive days the minor is employed, there is an obligation for the minor to be tutored. And I just want to actually hone in on the fact that 3 or more guaranteed days of consecutive employment is regardless of whether or not the minor actually performs the work or not. It is the fact that they are being guaranteed those 3 or more consecutive days that trigger the educational requirement. That typically is an average of 3 hours per day. There can be educational banking, and that's always going to be subject to the applicable state law. And it really is critical that per the contract, the producer provides a very safe and calm space for the minor to be tutored in. The minor can't possibly be traveling on a train or in a van or on a plane and obviously doing their tutoring. There really has to be a dedicated space that meets the contractual requirements. And I think it's also good to keep in mind that it is possible to employ a legally emancipated minor, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the educational requirements are not applicable. We still have many young performers who may be legally emancipated, but they are still enrolled in school, and then that education requirement will have to continue and be provided. So you heard me a little bit earlier talk about state laws, and many states have laws that are specific to the employment of minors in the entertainment industry. And in California, I did mention that there is a certified studio teacher, which is also known as a welfare worker. You have to obviously have a work permit to employ minors. And I'm going to also talk too about approval of variances. A variance is that something that comes from the state. The state of California has their rules in connection with the employment of minors, and SAG-AFTRA has its own under its collective bargaining agreement. If there is producer seeking any type of waiver or any type of concession in connection with the applicable state laws, they will need to reach out to that state and apply for what is called a variance. And I think it's also really important to know this, that California has the most, if not the most protective protections in place for the employment of child performers. And they're so great that they actually follow the California performer wherever they travel. So if they're coming to New York, if they are going to Nevada, those California child protection laws are applicable and will follow the minor. Minors are often performed and cast in roles of background actors. And we do get this question fairly bit as well. When you're employing a young performer specifically in a background actor role versus a principal role, do the same provisions apply? And there are very specific provisions of Section 50 that do carry over to background actors who happen to be young performers under Schedule X Part 1 and Part 2. And that's the working hours that I just talked about, the dressing rooms provision, the play areas, the medical care and safety. And of course, all applicable state child labor laws also apply to minor performers employed under background contracts. So we talked about some of the specific conditions for minors, but always keep in mind that when it comes to the contractual payments, any other protections or liquidated damages clauses, the same apply for young performers as they would do for performers who are adults. There really is no specific difference there. It's really the employment hours, the applicable child state protection laws, and some of the things that I've talked about, but everything else would also be applicable in the contract to young performers as well. Again, the health, safety, and well-being of our young performers is critical to the union. If a producer or any young performer or their parent, agent, or manager have any questions regarding the conditions or the terms that apply to a young performer's employment, we always ask that they feel free to reach out to us. We have wonderful resources on our website. We have a young performers page that has a variety of information germane to the employment of young performers. And thank you. That concludes my presentation on child performers, and I hope this has been extremely valuable.
Fantastic. Stephanie, thank you so much. We are going to shift into our Q&A portion. So these questions come from members, and I'm sure many will be familiar to you. A question that I know I had when I first heard the term, when I first got into town, is what is a Coogan account, and does my child need one? Who is Coogan? What are these Coogan accounts? What's happening here?
That's a great question, Ben, one I do receive a lot, and I'll start with the latter part. Yes, if you have landed in our industry, you will need to set up a Coogan account, named after the esteemed child actor Jackie Coogan. And these accounts do mandate that 15% of all of the minor's earnings must be set aside by the employer, and it has to be placed in a block trust account. And that has to be done within 15 days of the minor's employment. Now, the Coogan accounts are required by the state of California, New York, Illinois, Louisiana, and New Mexico. So the producers are obligated to obviously adhere to that. And in setting you up, they will specifically ask for that. Parents will have to provide proof of a trust account being set up, and that will have to be done prior to receiving that work permit. And of course, finally, you'll have to provide the actual Coogan account number to the employer so they can actually make that deduction of the 15% earnings.
So just so I'm clear, child performer earns, I'm going to pick a round number, $10,000. They booked an awesome guest star spot. you said 15% of that, so 1,500 would get paid of the 10,000 would go from the employer into the Coogan account when they run payroll, essentially.
That is correct, Ben.
Okay.
Absolutely, for the safekeeping for the future of the minor. And that is again in a block trust, which cannot be accessed, not even by the minor's parents.
And then that goes into the child performer's custody when they turn 18.
That is correct. Once they
Okay, great.
become legally an adult, they will have access to those funds.
Okay, great. All right, next question. What should I do if a producer asks if my child can work beyond curfew?
Mhm.
The child performer may be very excited to stay up past curfew. What should parents and everybody be thinking about in a situation like that?
Sure, absolutely, Ben. There are sometimes production needs, depending on the type of genre of the film, that require night filming, in the evening with the minors. Sometimes the minor is the star of the project and they are in every single scene. So that completely makes sense to us. And I think our message always to producers is that we do encourage them to come to the union so we can have that dialogue. But there are a few things that need to take place. Not only do the producers have to secure the parents' consent for the minor to work beyond those contractual curfew hours, as I stated earlier, it is really the parent who does know the minor best and their ability to stay up very late and and maybe not so much. But they will also too as well have to contact the applicable state that the minor is from, and also the state that the work is being performed in, as those state laws may also have curfews. And that means the producer would need to apply for the variance. And last but not least, even being granted a variance by the state the minor resides in or performs the work does not mean an automatic waiver of the union's collective bargaining agreement. The producer will need to contact the union to have that conversation as well.
Got it. Next question from the parent of a child performer. This parent asks, am I eligible to be compensated for overnight expenses for a film or TV production my child is working on?
Mhm. No, great question. And the CDA actually has a requirement that the producer has an obligation to bargain in good faith with parents. This is in connection with any expenses they incur in transporting, lodging, and meals, because as we know earlier from the presentation, Ben, the parent must be within sight and sound of the young performer. They are unable to travel on their own, particularly for employment that requires an overnight location. So that is the expectation, that the producer really listen to the parents, bargain on something, and really come to a mutual agreement in advance and not after the fact.
Got it. And it sounds like with the provisions in the collective bargaining agreement, certainly if a parent feels that a production is not negotiating in good faith, of course they can, talk with their representatives, who I imagine would be navigating that, but that their reps or the parent could reach out to the union as well.
Absolutely, Ben. We're always willing to have a conversation with the young performers' parents, legal guardian, their agents or managers if they were to, encounter such a situation. And then, we've had I think very much a lot of success with speaking with producers and helping to iron out those types of things.
Last, but certainly not least, we have the question, are there any onset considerations when working with minors? And assuming the answer is yes, what might some of those be?
Sure. The timing of the young performers' meals, their breaks should always be taken very, very seriously for all performers, but particularly for our minor performers. They should always be given consideration by being placed at the front of the meal line, so they have enough time to eat and rest before having to go back to set. I think that it's always really essential, Ben, to keep in mind that when you're employing young performers on the set, it's not just a workplace, it's also a learning and growing environment for them. They're furthering not only their craft, but also, they're growing and in their profession and also just as a person. I think it's really critical, and I've had many conversations with the young performers that they want to be listened to and treated with the same respect as any other professional performer would receive. And yes, they are minors, they are young performers, but it doesn't negate the fact that they are professionals who are working in a professional workplace.
Yeah, yeah, powerful reminders. This has been incredibly supportive. Stephanie, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I'm always available for any questions. I am the staff liaison to the Young Performers Committee, their advocate, as many of the union staff are, and we're always available to talk to them, their representation, and of course, producers.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for supporting us in empowering parents and child performers. I know I have worked with many, and my only complaint is that they often make me look bad. And so a big shout out to all of our young and child performers out there. You all are doing amazing work, and hopefully this presentation has supported in answering some of your questions. Stephanie, thank you again for being with us today. As a reminder to everybody watching, this presentation is available as a replay on our YouTube channel. You can watch them anytime. Feel free to send the link to other parents, other people who may find this information valuable. On behalf of the entire team here at SAG-AFTRA, we would like to thank you for watching. And as always, if you have ideas for topics you would like to see us cover, you can email them to us, pteoe@sagaftra.org. And before we go, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel to get updates on all of the content we are posting. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.